The newest wave of Innistrad Crimson Vow spoilers just got released, and they're looking pretty sweet. We have gross mythic rares, we have insane gigantic beasts, and crazy token generators to talk about.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends, I hope the day finds you well because we are here to talk about more Innistrad Crimson Vow craziness. So let us dive right in with one of the cards I've been waiting to see right here. This is Toxrill the Corrosive. And ever since the Innistrad teasers came out and we found out we were going to be getting a legendary slug horror, I have sat there with bated breath awaiting its arrival. And here we have it, and it does not disappoint. This card is gross on multiple levels. So 2 black and 5 gets you a 7/7 legendary slug horror. Right out of the gate, 7/7 is so massive. I am a sucker for gigantic creatures, but the body is just the beginning. So, first ability, at the beginning of each end step, put a slime counter on each creature you don't control. And creatures you don't control get -1/-1 for each slime counter on them. Now, I want to go over that again just one more time to make sure we're all clear. Every turn, you're going to get to put a slime counter on every single one of your opponent's creatures, and for every slime counter they have on them, they get -1/-1. Because there's a card that came out in the Dungeons & Dragons set, this fellow right here, the Sludge Monster, that combines amazingly with this slug to turn the situation into basically like every second turn, wipe out all your opponent's creatures. So, Sludge Monster is 2 blue and 3 for a 5/5. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, put a slime counter on up to one other target creature, and non-horror creatures with slime counters on them lose all abilities and have base power and toughness too. So you'll notice this cares about slime counters, will make all your opponent's creatures 2/2. But then when you take into account the fact that right away, as soon as they get their first slime counter on them, he's given them -1/-1 straight out of the gate. All of your opponent's creatures are 1/1s. And then the next turn they get another counter and they all go. And if your opponent puts out another creature, as soon as your turn rolls around, at the end of your turn, you're going to put a -1/-1 slime variation on them. Like, sure, if they get rid of Toxrill, the slime counters don't work the same way anymore, but who cares? That's absolutely nuts. And even without comboing it with that blue slime creature, this is an inevitable destruction of all your creatures as the slime counters build up one by one and your creatures get weaker and weaker. And that's not all Toxrill does. Whenever a creature you don't control with a slime counter on it dies, create a 1/1 black slug creature token. So if you're using the combo that I'm talking about, the second turn after Toxrill's out, your opponent loses all their creatures, and you get a number of 1/1 slugs equal to the number of creatures they had. That is absolutely gross. And then they just decided to tack on to the end of it, you know what, let's let them sack slugs as well. So a black and a blue, sacrifice a slug, draw a card. The image does look a little weird now that I notice down in either corner. It's a little faded, and that's because these were taken from promotional stills, so the cards don't look perfect. What are you going to do? But this card is gross, like I said, on multiple levels. Not just from the power perspective, but from the concept that essentially what Toxrill does is he sprays everybody down with his slug slime. You know when a slug or snail's moving along the ground and it leaves that trail of goop? He's spraying his goop all over everybody, and it's causing them to melt away, but at the same time they're melting away, it's turning them into a slug, like their body. Oh, it's such a gross transformation to think about. Imagine you got sprayed with this stuff and then you could feel yourself weakening, right? And that -1/-1 could be represented by things like your limbs falling off, right? Because these slugs don't have limbs. Your legs fall off, your arms turn into these crazy tentacles, and soon enough, you're a mindless slug under the dominion of Toxrill. You used to serve some wizard you faintly remember, but now you're a slug that crawled across the ground over to your opponent's side. You're literally taking all of their guys and turning them into slugs and turning them against them. It's such awesome flavor. And look at the artwork. Imagine that thing shows up and just glorps jank all over you. Good God, what an intense concept. This is an amazing Magic card. Absolutely love it. So, next up, we have another card that makes me super happy. I told you we have giant beasts. Man, I gotta say, when I look at cards like this, because green back in the day was like the weakest color in Magic, it had some okay cards here or there, like Fast Bond is nothing to sneeze at. But overall, green was the weakest color. And when I look at the strength of cards now, like Ulvenwald Oddity is 2 green and 2 for a 4/4 trample haste and has the ability to transform to its other side, which is even crazier. Back in the day, 4 mana like this would get you a 4/4 that would do 1 damage to you every turn. I'm not even joking. That's legit, like 4 mana for a 4/4. But since you're getting a 4/4 for 4, it's got to have a downside, so it doesn't damage to you. Like, we've come so far. 4 mana for a 4/4 trample haste already feels pretty sweet, but by today's standard, doesn't feel quite powerful enough. However, when you can pay 7 mana and transform it, but before we look at the transform side, take a moment to appreciate the artwork here. We can see this weird Ulvenwald Oddity beast that's out in the woods there. It's got that autumnal vibe with all of the trees, leaves turning red, which feels perfect for what's going on in the world right now. I can see it off my balcony. The trees are starting to change and looking quite nice. But this is a pretty much standard run-of-the-mill beast. You look at it and you go, okay, I mean, it looks it's like a shaggy beast with gigantic antlers, but I wouldn't call it an oddity. Well, wait till you see the other side. It transforms into the Ulvenwald Behemoth! 8/8 trample haste! Other creatures you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. It feels so good. I cannot wait to play with this thing. It's just, you just put it out and you're like, oh yeah, it's a 4/4 or whatever, but you know what, if I ever have 7 mana open, watch out, because boom, transform it. Now my other creatures are hasty and beefy, and you can see it reared up on its hind legs, and now you see what makes it an oddity. It has a gigantic chest mouth with crazy kind of like, almost crabbish or spiderish style legs that are somewhat reminiscent of what Emrakul did to the denizens of Innistrad. So it is, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a muted nod to the Eldrazi influence that occurred on Innistrad previously, or if it just happens to be a coincidence. But look at that mouth, man. It's like back on its back paws and it's roaring out, right? And I imagine that the mouth in its stomach is also bellowing out this hideous roar as well. And look in the background, you can see all of these wolves or other beasts that are, I guess, being summoned by its call, right? They know. It takes the wild, natural beasts and infuses them with this additional level of bloodlust so that they can move faster. They just charge out of the gate hastily. They have trample so they can plow over anything in their way, and they get +1/+1. This is a home run of a green card, and I cannot wait to get it into my deck. Moving on. We have Lunar Rejection. This is a very weird and admittedly cool concept. Lunar Rejection is 1 blue and 1 for an instant that has Cleave for a blue and 3. Now, Cleave is such a strange ability to me because it almost feels like it doesn't need to exist. It works pretty much almost like a kicker cost. Do you know what I mean? Where you would have a spell that says, do this, if you paid the kicker cost, do this instead, or do this as well. Whereas Cleave is let's play with brackets like it's a math equation, and then remove the brackets. So, I mean, I guess in one way, it keeps things fresh by creating a new ability, but it really does feel like it exists in the same space with other abilities like Kicker. So, what does it do? Basically, return target wolf or werewolf creature to its owner's hand, draw a card. If you paid 4 mana, return target creature to its owner's hand, draw a card. So it's like a kicked into the royal. Do you know what I mean? It kind of functions that way, but you get a discount on it if you're casting it on a wolf or werewolf. So it does feel like a little bit weird to have spells that are particularly keyed into wolves or werewolves, but it does make sense from the perspective of being on Innistrad, and it does make sense from the perspective of moon cycles. I'm not 100% sure if the artwork that's being used here was originally intended for a bounce style card, but the idea of a werewolf being rejected by the moon, or some kind of like physical reaction where, everybody, there's all these different mutations that exist in humanity, right? You can end up with allergies or any different kinds of problems. So this could be some manifestation of almost like an allergy to the moon, where it turns it into the werewolf and then it kicks in and it's like, no, and then just reverses it. I don't know. The artwork is very, very evocative. This is like a werewolf going through a reverse transformation. The artwork is really striking. It's a weird card. I mean, bounce and draw isn't too shabby, but ultimately I feel like this inhabits the same space as Into the Royal overall, and it's a not as good Into the Royal with much cooler artwork. The artwork definitely is deserving of respect. Moving on, we have Angelic Quartermaster. Take her to the arcade. She's a master of quarters. Hey kids, do you want to play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or that old awesome Simpsons arcade game? I don't know if you guys ever played that. Marge with the vacuum cleaner swinging around. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in Time, and the Simpsons arcade game were like some of the best arcade games you could ever play in your life. Anyhow, now that aside's out of the way, 2 white and 3 gets you a 3/3 flying angel soldier. When Angelic Quartermaster enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 other target creatures. The flavor text says, "Stand strong, we will reclaim the dawn." That's actually a pretty solid statement. So if you don't know what a quartermaster is somebody who's in charge of provisioning and supplies. So that would be somebody who would, like in the artwork here, would provide equipment to troops and things like that. So the quartermaster shows up, goes, "Here you go, here are some blades." In all honesty, this artwork is such a fantastic representation of the ability. I love it when everything ties together perfectly, and this card really does. The idea of an angelic quartermaster, I mean, you've got a winged quartermaster. They can have a lot more maneuverability, get to whatever troops they need to disperse the gear. This card gives 2 +1/+1 counters out at max, right? The artwork shows 2 soldiers, each getting a sword, which can be the +1/+1 counter. It works so perfectly, and the whole sort of like darkened sky with the moon in the back gives it that gloomy kind of feel, and like the hands up like that are raised up to grab the blades is defiance against the encroaching night. I really like the way this is executed. Literally the only criticism I could make is that I think that the headpiece looks a little goofy on her, but other than that, absolutely awesome looking card. Next up, we've got Pack Song Puppy. So cute. This is cute little puppers. All right, 1 green and 1 for a 1/1 wolf. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control another wolf or werewolf, put a +1/+1 counter on Pack Song Pup. When Pack Song Pup dies, you gain life equal to its power. The flavor text says, "A wolf pup is always dangerous because a wolf pup is a pulp." Oh no, not wolf. No, don't pulp, my little friend. Because a wolf pup is never alone. Well, I mean, even if you look at it on the surface, just being a 1/1, that's enough to take out a person. A little wolf cub, theoretically, depending, could take out a full-grown human, depending, all right? So overall, it's a pretty straightforward concept. This is a little baby wolf who gets bigger as you have wolves out. He just grows stronger each turn under the guidance of the other wolves. It's really not too shabby at all. The fact that you only need another wolf for it and that it will grow for free every turn is solid, and the fact that it will give you life is also solid. I could see myself playing this card, but I'm not sure if I have enough wolves or werewolves that he'll actually turn out to be good. So I'm going to give him a try, and we'll see. I like the artwork a lot. He's just this adorable little like silver wolf cub, and you can see in the background, like he's there right in the moonlight, how with his little wolf voice, and the other like adult wolves are coming out of the darkness and, "What's up, buddy? You sing, we're gonna hunt." That's awesome. All right. Then we've got Vile Spawn Spider. I told you guys, we have some crazy token generation. This is one of the cards. Vile Spawn Spider. This also falls into the gross category. 1 green and 1 blue for a 2/3 spider with reach. already, I mean, the cards are just getting better and better. 2 mana for a 2/3 reach. This card would have cost at least 1 more mana back in the day, bare minimum, and had no other abilities. So, 2/3 reach, at the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card. And then the other ability is pay 1 blue, 1 green, and 2, tap, sacrifice Vile Spawn Spider, create a 1/1 green insect creature token for each creature card in your graveyard. Activate only as a sorcery. So, this thing feeds cards into your graveyard, so it feeds graveyard strategies. And then you can get rid of it to bring a massive swarm of insects, which, I mean, depending on the size of your graveyard and the type of deck you're playing, you could generate a ton of 1/1 insect tokens with this. Like, on top of that, the concept to me is so gross. Like, it's this spider with this bulging sac on its back where it's just growing all of these like different insects, but it's doing it by feeding on the life force of all these creatures that have just died. So every time a creature dies, the spider leaps on its corpse and starts feasting, and then another little like egg bubbles up in the gigantic back sphere, and it's like, oh man, that's everybody you knew before. That's just horrific and gross. You know, you think about that, it's like, oh, I don't know if you guys have seen those videos from like Australia and stuff where, I mean, first of all, they have like so many things over there that are super dangerous, but they have like spider season or something like that where everything gets covered in spider webs. And I mean like everything. It looks like somebody went wild with the cotton candy or somebody was going crazy for Halloween, but there are spider webs everywhere. It's terrifying. And they have these like clumps, and you'll be like, what is that? And somebody will tap it, and it's like 1 billion spiders, and they all start boiling off the pile, going in different directions, and my skin tries to jump off my body as my brain screams, run! Run! It's horrific. The idea, the concept of this thing's back, like, boiling open like a giant cyst, and tons of spiders just come scurrying out. Yikes. So on top of being an awesome token generator with what seems like a lot of potential, who knows though, maybe this will just be relegated to being like significant in draft. But it really does feel like a build around me crazy insect concept. And the artwork does give an evocative, gross feel where that focus is totally on that insect sphere on the back. Gross. Okay, let's move on to the next card. We've got another crazy token generator. This thing is really solid. This is Kessig Wolfrider. It's 1 red for a 1/2 menace creature, and it's got an ability, 1 red and 2, exile 3 cards from your graveyard, create a 3/2 red wolf creature token. Now on the surface, this card may not seem that impressive right away, but once you really start to boil down what it is, you go, oh no, I'm thinking about spiders and the boiling. Once you break down what's going on overall, the card actually seems really, really potent. First of all, it's only 1 red mana to put out, which means you can put it into mono red decks that lean heavily on the gas. You know what I mean? Which is a lot of mono red decks. So mono red decks usually aren't about, you know what, I'm going to wait until about the 6th turn before I start doing anything. That's white blue control style. So you've got a creature right off the bat that's 1 mana for a 1/2, which isn't that exciting. But it does have menace, which means while you're waiting to get enough mana to use its ability, you're going to be able to swing in with it. Because they're probably not going to have 2 creatures right away. If you put it out on the first turn, you're going to get to swing with it a couple of times, most likely. And there's also the fact that as a 1/2, is your opponent going to want to dedicate 2 creatures to block it? Because it's just going to kind of make it more difficult to block your other creatures. But that's where you can do it at the beginning. And then after you've gone through a bunch of once you've burned through some of your burn spells or other like let's go style red cards, then all of a sudden you can start exiling them to make 3/2 red wolf tokens. That is a significantly sized token, right? This is almost like a variation on Grim Lavamancer. Grim Lavamancer is 1 red tap, remove 2 cards from your graveyard, 2 damage to any target, which ultimately feels stronger because it requires less cards and it is targeted burn, so you can use it as removal. But this can be used to generate a bunch of extra tokens at essentially no real cost, because red decks tend to go, 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 and then they're like, okay, we went. Now we're sitting here with an empty hand, barely anything to do, and this allows you to capitalize on the extra mana you have kicking around and capitalize on the cards that you've already played through. So it's really solid in that regard. And the artwork looks really awesome too, right? Like, basically, the way I view it is, at first, she's not really riding a wolf. She's just out there as a 1/2 human with her gear, and then she's able to summon up this wolf. Because that wolf looks like a big fat 3/2, doesn't it? I mean, yeah, technically you combine them and then it would be bigger, but that's the way Magic works, right? So I just view the 1/2 as her, because I have a hard time believing that these two combined together are a 1/2, right? This is definitely with the token. And they're shown in this like graveyard. Dude, this has got such like a great dark vibe. They've done a really amazing job with both Innistrad sets of delivering this particular like dark Halloweenish kind of flavor. I'm a huge fan. I'm really pleased with the execution. So we have Rending Flame to talk about next. This is an interesting concept. 1 red and 2 for an instant. It deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If that permanent is a spirit, Rending Flame also deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. The flavor text says, it's our duty to bring the blessed sleep to the dead, even if they resist that gift. And that's Greet. That's a quote from Greet, Order, from the Order of St. Traft. All right, so the idea of this is really simple. It is like almost spectral flame that's designed to send geists to a peaceful sort of end. And it's crazy that whoever crafted this spell took umbrage with planeswalkers who are using spirits for their own ends. So they made it so that if you use it on a spirit, it goes, hey, yeah, you know what? You're going to suffer too. Stop taking spirits from Innistrad and forcing them to serve you. I like it. And the artwork looks awesome. You can see a geist, and it's like it's being like purified by flame. That's the vibe it gives, because the flame doesn't feel like I don't know, like the kind of flame you would send at an enemy. It has a different kind of vibe to it. It's not like you're trying to destroy them. It's like you're trying to free them. And that does actually come across somewhat in the artwork. I like it. It's pretty cool. So that wraps up all the spoilers we have to talk about. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Big thank you to all my patrons, and I'm going to leave my newest Innistrad lore video up on the screen for you. Go and enjoy it. It's a really good story.